I'm Michael Bain, and welcome to Triggered, coming to you, of course, from a cold, snowy, secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains in Colorado in our own Dragon House studios, and as always, brought to you by Midway USA. Just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. A little later in the show, by the way, we have a great interview with trainer Jeff Gonzales from Texas, of course, a former member of the SEAL teams. Great guy, great friend. You're not going to want to miss this. But first, I want to talk about this gun from Volquartsen. Now, you know Volquartsen is a sponsor, right? Been a sponsor for a long time. Scott Volquartsen and I have been friends for a very long time. What Volquartsen has been doing over the course of its existence, Scott's father before him, is specializing very good competition .22s. And this is the latest iteration of the Volquartsen competition pistol. It is a Mamba-X. They like them snakes, don't they? And the reason I wanted to show it to you and spend a little time with it today is this may be the best out-of-the-box .22 competition pistol I've ever handled. And as you guys know, I've spent a lot of time with .22 competition pistols. Again, one of the founders of the Rimfire Challenge Shooting Association, have shot precision .22 rimfire a lot. But in talking to Scott and talking to the guys there at Volquartsen, including Colby Pavlock, who is one of the greatest Rimfire Challenge, Steel Challenge .22 shooters in the world, they're like, this gun is pretty much everything we know about a .22 competition pistol in one spot. So let me talk about it just a little bit here. You'll notice first, it's got an interesting profile. Essentially, Volquartsen has spent a lot of time working with this square profile barrel. Essentially, there's a stainless steel barrel and breech wrapped in this aluminum outer, which is what you've seen on a lot of uppers for the Ruger platform, the Ruger Mark guns. One thing I've always liked about it is they developed a really good single port compensator. But since they have a square profile, looks kind of funky, right? But what Volquartsen finally did was, this is a threaded barrel, and you can see here they have their own nut that threads down, tightens down this compensator so it matches perfectly. And the compensator does work. I know a lot of people say, well, there's not this huge recoil in a .22. The compensator buys a little. And if you happen to be, say, Colby, where you're at the very top of your craft, you're one of the very top .22 shooters in the world, a little means a lot. This is basically an evolution of their LLV-4X competition upper, which they've been working on variations of it for a long time. This is the 6-inch version. You can also get it in a 4.5-inch version. And one of the things I like about it, obviously at this point right now, we have a Seymour sight on it. Just your basic flat Seymour sight, and you'll notice how close you're able to mount that Seymour down. One of the drawbacks of the Seymour has always been that it sits high, but this version of the Mamba-X is a flat top. So across the top of the upper is completely flat, and it's drilled for every conceivable red dot sight on earth. It looks like Swiss cheese, all these holes. So whichever red dot sight that you are running, you can bolt it directly to the upper. So you don't have to have a rail. It's not that big a deal. Rails always add a little bit more height. You can also get this upper with iron sights. You can get it set up so that it's got a rail, a Picatinny rail already set in it. Lower is a Ruger 2245 that has the Volquartsen accurizing kit in it and their magazine release. It is state-of-the-art in terms of the accurizing kit. Comes with a Volquartsen competition bolt that, you see how bright it is there? It's coated with a black diamond-like finish, DLC, diamond-like coating, which makes it very slippery. We're going to talk a little bit more about this, do a couple of comparisons when we get back. Welcome back to Triggered, where we've been talking about this Volquartsen Mamba-X 22 long rifle competition pistol. Easily the best out-of-the-box 22 competition pistol I've ever shot, and the fastest. You can run this thing really, really quickly because, to me, it has the perfect balance. I wanted to mention the trigger. Obviously, this is a polymer 2245 Ruger frame. It's a Mark IV. What's interesting about a Mark IV? Mark IVs have the magic button in the back. You push the button, the whole top end comes off. Then you put it back on, whole top end goes on, as opposed to the usual endless rigmarole of trying to figure out how to put a Ruger Mark III and Mark II standard back together. The trigger on this gun is exceptional. It is, as I said earlier, it's a Volquartsen accurizing kit. It's been installed in this gun. It's 2¼ pound trigger. Mine comes like 2.3 on a 10-shot average off a Lyman digital gauge. And the reason I think this balance is just about perfect is, let me show you my previous competition gun that I've spent years tinkering with. This is a Tactical Solution upper. This was the original, I believe, Vampire gun. I'm going to have to sit it like this. The original Vampire gun, one of the very first brightly colored 22s. I actually got this upper when Daniel Horner, one of the greatest shooters in the world now, was 14 years old and always called me sir. It's really creepy. But it's a 6-inch long Tactical Solutions upper, once again, stainless steel barrel in an aluminum shield. Now look at this frame. This frame is an aluminum Volquartsen custom 2245 frame, Mark III. Now the cool thing about this is it adds a little weight on the low end. It is also fitted with the same Volquartsen accurizing kit as the Mamba-X. Instead of the single port compensator, you got a multi-port compensator. I think this is a Tactical Solution compensator. Obviously, the earlier 2245s had molded in grips. They were designed by Ruger to mimic the grip angle of a 1911 and used as a training gun for all of us when we were shooting IPSC with 1911s. Remember, a long time ago. But eventually they came out with a version where you could just use standard 1911 grips. The Mamba-X comes with the hoe grips with the finger grooves, which I can take or leave, mostly leave. This is just a custom set of panels on it. This has a polished Ruger bolt in it. Typically on some of the other guns I've gone to tactical or tandem cross competition bolts, which I found works very well. But this gun weighs almost 29 ounces without the sight on it. This gun with the sight on it weighs 32.8 with the heavy Seymour on it. To me, this is the perfect balance point. I'm going to put a Seymour on this gun to get some apples and apples comparison, but once I put the Seymour on this gun, it is going to weigh within 1/10 of an ounce probably of the Mamba-X. And I'm going to shoot them alongside each other. This gun has a 2-pound trigger on it. Interesting story on this. I have installed a couple of these Volquartsen custom 2245 frames. And on this particular one, I was putting it together, and I was actually had a video going of something else on my computer screen, and I had headphones on, I was listening, and I was putting it together because I can usually put a Mark II or Mark III together asleep. I put it together wrong, and I couldn't undo it. And finally, the next day I had to call Scott Volquartsen. I said, Scott, I'm a little stuck here. And I explained to him, and he goes, congratulations, Michael. You figured out the only way in the world to have a non-recoverable error on a Mark III. So I had to send it to Mark, and he fixed it, or send it to Scott. Scott fixed it. But I'm interested in shooting these two guns together. I've been shooting this ammunition in both guns. It's Ely Club. It is not the high price spread, but it's not chopped liver either. I found it to be very accurate in my competition semi-automatics, and more importantly, it runs in my competition semi-automatics. So we'll do some more, show you some accuracy tests, show you some speed tests. But this is a gun I built up over a period of years. Like I said, this gun is old at this point. But if you don't want to spend your time buying parts, trying them, and throwing them away, Volquartsen Mamba Mamba-X. When we come back, boy, I had this great conversation with Jeff Gonzales. Jeff is one of the most thoughtful trainers in America. We've been friends a long time, and he and I were talking about some of the issues in the training community, and he goes, I've got some very important things to say. You'll be able to see all of it on our Triggered special, but when we come back, I'm going to show you a part of that conversation. This week's Triggered is brought to you by Midway USA, just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. Volquartsen Firearms, excellence is essential. Taurus USA, prepare and protect. Rock Island Armory Arms Corps, home of the STK 100.
One of the things that I think we as an industry, and I put myself in this as well, is that we don't do a good enough job addressing the fact that we're training for an unknown. So an unknowable event. Deadly force encounters, by their very nature, are going to be an unknowable event. If you knew that you were about ready to participate in a deadly force encounter, I would like to think that there would be other options. You know, you would have that kind of premonition to do something different, right? So the problems that I see within the industry, the training industry, is when people are trying to train you to be a specialist. They're focusing in one very niche, narrow area, and at a cost of being competent in other areas that might be necessary. So because, and you know, we have a lot of the new catchphrase within the industry is evidence-based. And, you know, I'm very critical about people throwing those terms around because, again, what we're doing is, and, you know, you're seeing it in a lot of different ways, but what we're doing is we're sliding further and further into a specialist role versus being a generalist. And I feel like training a student for an unknown, unknowable event as a generalist is much better than trying to be a specialist. And so when I say that, what I mean is like, we recognize that with a handgun, there are what we call 16 essential skills, and we want each shooter to develop these essential skills to a high level of competency, if not master them, right? And the point behind the idea behind these essential skills is that you're not going to know what type of gunfight you're going to be in. Maybe it happens at night, maybe it happens in the day. Maybe you're seated, maybe you're standing. Maybe you're on your back, maybe you're on your feet. Maybe you have one hand, maybe you have both hands. I don't know. And I'm not going to presume to be able to give you clairvoyance into the future enough to say, all you need to do is practice this. This is all you need. But I will say that when you have a generalist mindset and you strive to elevate each of those essential skills to a minimum standard, then the beautiful thing about that is that you just let the situation dictate. But you said it earlier about a new shooter, what they're looking for is confidence. So if you have minimum skill set across those 16 essential skills, if you have them to at least a minimum standard, then if you're confronted by some sort of deadly force encounter that falls outside of that specialist reign or realm, I should say, now you have better tools to accommodate and manage whatever these new things are that are coming at you. So I feel like if you're an instructor and you're focusing in on one niche area, that is your prerogative. It's your school, it's your name on the door, whatever you want to do. But then acknowledge what you're doing. I'm training somebody for a specific set of skills. It's this, only this, which means that if you find yourself in this situation, I can't help you. What I'm training you for maybe isn't going to work there, or maybe is not the best way to manage that. So I put much more value, particularly in the new shooter world, at developing them to be more of a generalist than a specialist when it comes to dealing with an unknown, unknowable event. That's the key. That's what people can't, like whenever you start talking to me about evidence-based, I'm like, is there a guarantee that's exactly how it's going to go down? No, there's not a guarantee. Exactly. You can't guarantee that. You're doing a disservice to your students if you imply this is the type of gunfight you're going to be in. It's going to take only one round. It's going to take 2 rounds. It's going to only take 1 round to the head, whatever. If you imply that, you're setting the students up for a false sense of security, which will ultimately lead to failure. Because what happens, and we see this particularly when we're working in the assaults, when we started out in CQB history, we had very scripted movements. I mean, it was super scripted. And if you made a mistake, it was a serious offense. What we found was being super scripted didn't allow us to accommodate for the unknown. Once we got on target and there wasn't a door where we thought there was going to be, now what? Or there, instead of the door opening in, it opens out. Now what? So instead of being flustered and behind the 8 ball, because now this doesn't match what you had in your head, what we discovered that if we create more of a generalist, instead of being so specific with their movements, we give them some parameters to work within. And we let them kind of explore that through their experience. And then they build up an understanding and a knowledge base of, okay, I've seen something like this before. It's not exact. It's not precisely what this layout is like, but I've been there enough to where I can bridge the gap. And that's what we were doing. What we had was we had skill level here, but the event was right in here, and we had the ability to bridge that gap. And that is the biggest injustice that we do within the shooting industry, is that we fail to prepare the students to be able to bridge those gaps, to be able to jump, not necessarily exactly into the specific or the specialist type skills that they've developed, but being able to see the situation, read the situation, and then be able to react in a timely manner with effective strategies that are going to save your life or save the life of a loved one. That is what kind of like gets on my nerves these days when I see that happening. It's like, but again, it's like I try to stay out of it to a certain extent. I try not to become overly involved with the various trainers, particularly the newer ones, unless they are interested in unless they have questions. I'm always there to ask questions, but I'm not going to go in there and poke my nose in their business and say, hey man, you're doing this all wrong.
You can't do that.
Not at all. You're never going to get through to them in that sense. They have to feel like there is once they recognize, okay, let me at least collect more information and see what else is out there. And then that's the only thing that you can do. But for the students, that's where I feel like as an industry, we could do a better job. We could do a much better job.
Well, it's interesting because I've always thought that violence, like nature, is a pure chaos system. It's non-predictable because you're not aware of all the factors going into it. When I learned to cave dive, which is really just plain ass stupid. my first instructor said, I've kept this when I went back to like firearms training, is he goes, if you have any expectations down there, you will die.
No.
He goes, if you think you know how it's going to go and how you're going to respond to it, he goes, simple truth, you're going to die in those tunnels. And he goes, wipe it out of your head. He goes, you can't know what's going to happen. And he goes, you don't know what's going to fail. And I'm like, well, but what about, and it's like, he goes like, no, he goes, and my instructor, a guy named John Orlowski, he is the certifier of certifiers in cave diving. He's the man,
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm telling you the difference between people who are alive and people who are dead.
Wow.
And he goes, people who are alive just went down there, and when shit fell apart, they figured out a way out.
Yeah.
And he goes, the ones who said, okay, I know how to deal with this, actually didn't.
Yeah.
Because nature has more things to throw at you than you can prepare for.
So true, man.
I mean,
that's a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. I think, it's a higher level way of thinking, because it in a sense, it acknowledges that you have no control and that you must be able to adapt to the situation. And it's just like nature. Those that are capable of adapting in real time are the ones that are more than likely going to survive. And I hate to say it that way, because I don't want people to think that all the training they've undergone is wasted, because that's not what I'm trying to say. But what I'm trying to say is that there is so much unpredictability about this particular profession, the business end of this profession, that to fail to acknowledge that, or to think that you have the answers, to think that you have, like Moses came down and handed you the tablets and now you have the answers, that is a little bit, I think that's dangerous. I think that's very dangerous.
You really want to be sure to catch this entire interview with Jeff Gonzales on Triggered Specials, also on michaelbain.tv, which is free, always been free. If you're going to get training, it helps to be able to listen to what the trainers say. That will help you make your choices. As always, you can find us on michaelbain.tv, always free. You can find us on YouTube, also free. Rumble, we're there. I'm Michael Bain. This is Triggered, brought to you by Midway USA. Just about everything for shooting, hunting, and the outdoors. And we will see you next week.